That's why we have volunteers. We get to tell them what to do. You know, it is my great pleasure to welcome back Jesse Ford, who was with us a couple of months ago with a fabulous talk called Holy Belonging. Today's talk is titled Holy Humanism. I think there might be something to this holy thing. So would you please welcome Jesse Ford. I know, you're going to go up in the world here.
This is great. Thank you. It is so great to be back. Wardrobe adjustment. Okay. It's great to be back, and thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for letting me run off with one of your hymnals and bring it back today. I'd like to start with a reading from this book that's no longer available. It's called In the Simple Morning Light, and it's a book of meditations by Unitarian Universalist Barbara Rohde, who was she was one of the early members of our fellowship in Corvallis, Oregon. And she just has a lot of really beautiful reflections in this book. This is called Reclaiming the Sacred Words. My friend Maggie was working in her kitchen one afternoon when she overheard her young son talking with a classmate who had come to play after school. In the midst of milk and cookies, the visitor, who came from a Catholic family, began to talk about communion. "What's communion?" David, her son, asked, as any Unitarian Universalist child would. "Oh," his friend responded, "it's where you go to a special place in the church and they give you bread and wine." David's face lit up with delight and understanding. "Oh, yes," he said, "we have that too, only we call it potluck." I laughed when Maggie told me that story, but I've thought about it often and see a truth in it. I suspect the final supper that Jesus had with his friends resembled a potluck more than the rite of the Eucharist. And I have to say that personally, I always thought that's what the loaves and fishes were about too. Really, seriously. At times I have experienced a UU potluck that partook of communion, a time when the occasion was infused with love. Not all potlucks are communions, of course, few are. But then, not all communions are communions. Still, there is a spiritual meaning and nourishment that calls for the name communion. And it bothers me that we have so readily given up the concept as well as the word. Instead of trying to reclaim religious words, to rediscover their underlying meaning, we, Unitarian Universalists, merely throw them out. I believe there is such a thing as communion, though it is not necessarily a religious rite at the altar of the church. There are times that are truly holy, sacred, Sabbaths. But the setting aside of one day a week and naming it the Sabbath is merely a reminder, a symbolic reminder of the true Sabbath of our lives. My confirmation did not take place when I was 14 after a class in the Presbyterian Church. Rather, when I was 59 years old, desperately ill, facing death and excruciating pain, yet embraced by love and intelligence. Everything in which I had professed to trust was verified and strengthened by experience. I never hesitate to call that my confirmation. So I want to thank Lydia for the concept of thanksmas. Thanks, Mas. I've had the same dilemma and am in the same situation, and I'm going to take that one home to my family. Because it's holy. Actually, it's a holy time of year. And we have to say, it has been a week, hasn't it? It's been yet another week in our lives. We've seen a lot about the strengths and the downsides about both authoritarian and democratic regimes in dealing with COVID. We've seen the hatred and fear and oppression of LGBTQ bodies and lives expressed in, of all places, the World Cup, hosted by Qatar this year, not to mention the massacre in Colorado last week. And then there's the headline of the continuing decimation of avian flu, now the largest on record in the USA, causing the deaths by pathogens of millions, tens of millions of domestic chickens, ducks, and turkeys, and not so incidentally 3,700 wild birds. Of course, that's only, I did the math, 0.0074% of the number of wild birds killed by running into windows in the US. Also affected by avian flu, seals in Maine, and even one black bear in Alaska. So it's sort of the COVID of the animal world, caused essentially by close and unnatural confinement of animals explicitly reared to be eaten by us humans, us 8 billion humans. I call all of that truly unholy. And I mean that deeply, passionately, and spiritually. Truly the absence of the holy. And then I think, holy, sacred, wait, what is my you self talking about exactly here? So I want to tell you a story. Last Sunday, I was hosting a conversation, facilitating a conversation in my home congregation in Corvallis about Article 2, the proposed changes to our UUA bylaws on a national level, which is to say changes in our 7 principles and 6 sources, among other things. And I wanted to start by lighting a chalice, because I think this is going to work. So I lit the chalice and I said, I'm lighting this chalice because this is really holy. And before I could finish my sentence, somebody said, what do you mean by holy? And I thought, oh, such a great Unitarian Universalist question. But then I had to think on my feet, you know. It's like, what do I mean by holy? And what I finally came up with, which works for me, but I'm going to reflect on it a great deal more here. When I use the word holy, it refers to that which deep, deep, deep in my soul I know to be much larger than my individual self and my overblown ego in this universe. So that's satisfied in a moment. But it got me thinking about the language of reverence, which can be so uncomfortable for you to use, although it doesn't seem like it's that much of an issue here. But, you know, we come in the Western part of Unitarian Universalism, and particularly the fellowship movement, is largely humanist. So for a lot of people, it actually is very uncomfortable language, even if they may not say that out loud. But I actually became a Unitarian Universalist when, the day after our wedding, back in 1993, when we were married in a holy way, but not recognized by the state, we held it at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, about which we knew nothing, because it was in the round and it was a beautiful space, and our minister was a good friend of the associate minister there. And after the wedding, which we held in the evening, it was amazing. I mean, something happened in that room, and we stayed up all night talking about it. Something holy happened. Now understand, we were both raised, Merce was raised Congregational, I was raised Episcopal. It's like it didn't take. And we both found holy and sacred in the woods and rivers. So canoeing, hiking, as many people in Oregon do also. But after that wedding, we said, something holy happened, and that's not a word that was in either of our vocabularies. And so we decided we needed to find a place where we could say that. And it would not invoke either disdain or assumptions about what we might or might not think or feel about Jesus and crosses and that. Because this is so largely a Christian country. Don't even think to acknowledge other religions that also are very intentional about holiness and sacredness. Well, fast forward many years, 20 years or so, and I had some moments where I had a loss of faith. Stuff happened, it doesn't matter what it is, and I was devastated, and it was visceral. And this was, in my UU congregation. I was literally incapacitated, I could not get out of bed. And I was thinking, I'm having a crisis of faith. But what is that? Faith in what? Because I didn't then see myself as a theist. I still don't, except on maybe alternate Tuesdays now. And so I was thinking, faith in 7 principles and 6 sources, those are just ideas. I mean, they're great ideas, but they're not visceral. And of course I still believed in them, but don't many, many people of many, many faiths also believe in at least the 7 principles that we espouse, if not actually the 6 sources, because that is where we find ourselves to be multi-religious. So what was it that flattened me? It was loss of community. It was loss in the joy of a community where I could say holy and not be run out of the congregation. Where I could say holy, as I said, and not be assumed to be talking about this, that, or something else. Where I could be together with other humans and privately, if need be, other than human beings, plants, birds, fish, mammals, insects, the cosmos, wind, fire, earth, water. And there would be people that could understand, even if they did not share that, and with whom I could celebrate and mourn and be silly with in the face of all that is. Where I could show up as my full, fabulous, lesbian, non-binary self in this complicated, beautiful mess of humans, and myself doing my small part to help us learn from our messes and grow. To me, that's holy. So once more, when I use that word, I know deep in my soul that there is something bigger than me. And today, and every day, I must also consider what I truly believe is unholy. How in the last 200 or maybe 500 or maybe 3,000 or 4,000 years of the minuscule amount of times that humans have been on this planet, when you think geologically, just this small slice of this time, the minuscule slice of this minuscule time, the mess we've made here, that we've done here, intentionally, in part, and also a great deal of collateral damage, all in the name of material comfort and also convenience. Not every culture behaves in this way, I hasten to add. In fact, most of the cultures of the original peoples here in the Americas didn't do that. For many cultures, spiritual values are at least as important as material comfort, and for many cultures they're way more important. But now, this kind of holiness I just described seems to be rather globalized. So, we have thought our way into glorious visions, amazing accomplishments, medicine, space travel, energy-efficient appliances that make our 8 billion lives truly so much more comfortable and convenient. I mean, it would be hard to do this without heat today, because it's really, really cold. So I'm very grateful for that. And light. You know, but at what cost? What cost? So, how does humanism come into this? Well, I want to start by saying, especially for those of you who are new to Unitarian Universalism, both Unitarians and Universalists have long and separate histories. And they were both on the radical fringe of the Protestant Reformation. They had different heresies. The Unitarian heresy was God is one, not three. And the Universalist heresy was no one is damned to hell because God is love. So no Calvinism, no purgatory, no you're damned because you look like you're not doing well in the world, so you must be damned. None of that. I should also say that all religions have done a great deal of work since those times, so I'm not writing anybody off. But then, those were all God-centered, theist